Hello, New Covenant Community Church. Today we're going to continue on in Hebrews 11, verses 8 through 22. And we're going to see more examples of faith in the Old Testament. Particularly, what we're going to see is we're going to see the examples of faith in the rest of the book of Genesis. So we saw some examples from Genesis 4, 5, 6. Here we're going to see some examples from really Genesis 12 through 50 and examples of faith. So by faith, Abraham, when he obeyed, so he showed his faith through his obedience, when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance, and he went out not knowing where he was going, by faith he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and with Jacob, heirs with him of that same promise. So he's been made a promise, right? And that promise is really an inheritance that he's going to have. And he leaves everything that he knows in order to go that. And he lives there as in a foreign land, living in tents with his children and grandchildren, is the idea, Isaac and with Jacob. He trusted God, and he showed his trust in God by his obedience to God and his word. He left Ur initially in chapter 11, and then he leaves Haran in chapter 12, where his family is, after all of his family had gone with him. Why did he do this? Because he was looking forward to a city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. He's living as in a foreign land. He's not looking for a city of this world. He's looking for a city whose designer and builder is God. So then by faith, Sarah herself received power to conceive. So she believed God, even when she was past the age. So she had already gone through an old life, and she was past the age of childbearing. Since she considered him faithful who had promised, who is the him there? God had promised. So she considered God faithful. Therefore, from one man, and him as good as dead, he's almost 100 years old, Abraham, when God made this promise to him and to Sarah, were born descendants as many as the stars of heaven, and as many as the innumerable grains by the sand by the seashore. So this stars of heaven, and sand of the seashore, to talk about Abraham's descendants, is used throughout Genesis, really 12 through 17, in the way that it's discussed. In chapter 12, they're described as the dust of the earth, 15, the stars in the sky, and 17, the sand on the seashore. These, though, Abraham, Sarah, and their descendants after them, these all died in faith, not having received the things promised. They were looking forward to, what were they looking forward to? A city whose designer and builder was God. They lived as foreigners. They're not looking forward to an earthly city. They're looking forward to something else. These all died, not having received the things promised, but having seen them and greeted them from afar, and having acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles where? On the earth. For people who speak thus make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. If they had been thinking of that land from which they had gone out, if they had looked back at Ur, or if they had looked back at Haran, so if they look back, basically, they would have had opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country, that is a heavenly one, right? One that's designer and builder is God, because they're strangers, right? They're exiles, they're foreigners here. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared for them a city. So he has prepared that city for them. So by faith, Abraham, when he was tested, this is Genesis 22, offered up Isaac, and he who had received the promises was in the act of offering up his only son, the son of the promise, of whom it was said, through Isaac shall your offspring be named. That was a quote from Genesis 17. He considered that God was able even to raise him from the dead. So here, the author of Hebrews is telling us that Abraham trusted God so much that he believed that God was going to raise Isaac from the dead if he did go through sacrificing him. And it says, from which figuratively speaking, he did receive him back. Isaac didn't die. That's why he says figuratively speaking here. But that's kind of the language that he's using. So by faith, Isaac invoked the future blessings of Jacob and Esau. So by faith, Isaac understood and knew. So as we see the birth of the marriage of Isaac in 24 and then 25, the promise of the children who were coming in 26, the fracture between Jacob and Esau in Genesis. He invoked future blessings on Jacob and Esau. He's the one who blessed them. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of the sons of Joseph. So this is what happens in Genesis 48, bowing in worship over the head of his staff. By faith, Joseph, at the end of his life, made mention of the exodus of the Israelites and gave directions concerning his bones. He's saying at the end of Joseph's life, when he says, don't leave my bones here, take them back, he's anticipating the exodus. Genesis 15 anticipates the exodus when God tells Abraham that his descendants would be in captivity in a land for 400 years that wasn't their own. All of this is showing that they desire not a kingdom or a country or a homeland of their own, but a heavenly one. They don't desire a city built by men or a land that is geographically located here and now, but they desire a dwelling with God in his place. They look to a new Eden. They look to a new heavens and a new earth. They look to a place where right relationship with God is once again realized. And if they look back, if they look at this world with a fondness or with a desire to make friends with this world or to be friendly with this world, then, well, they really won't be operating in faith. In 1 John 2, he says, if anyone loves the world or the things of the world, the love of the Father is not in him. And James even says this. James says, don't you know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? And so we are a people who operate in faith and should not look back or to this world as our home. But we should understand, like the author of Hebrews says here, and like Peter says in 1 Peter 1, that we are strangers and sojourners, that we are exiles in this world.